truth is, with all of the rural and geodetic temperature and weather monitoring stations around the world, if you take all the data from all of those and put it together, the truth is the temperature is actually getting a little cooler, not warmer. How do they perpetrate this global warming hoax? It's very simple. They take the temperature readings where the temperature is affected by some outside source, such as in the middle of a city. Right. They just change the place where they're taking the temperature so that the temperature is affected by something else. Artificial, usually man-created, like parking lots. Where is the temperature greater? In the park or in the parking lot? In the parking lot. Now I want to go a long way back into history. Things that you need to know, and it's going to explain a few things that you've been seeing, and then we'll come up to modern time, and then the last couple of hours are going to be spent on what's going on and what you can do about it. Okay? But first we have to understand history. We've got to. If we don't understand history, if we don't understand symbology, if we don't understand race and religion, you cannot possibly understand what's happening today, or why, who's bringing it about, and what you can do to combat it. It's absolutely impossible. A lot of people think they can, but they can't. And I'll give you an example of how you can't. Isn't it true that most Americans have been spending a lot of time for a lot of years trying to figure out who in the hell is destroying this country? Haven't they? Well, if you've been spending all that time, what's your answer? Logically, from what you yourself have discovered, not what I've told you up here. The answer is you still don't know, right? Isn't that correct? You look around for the enemy and you can't find the enemy. It's because you haven't looked in the mirror. And that's the truth. You looked everywhere. Except right here. I've searched my entire life to find the devil. And I finally found him. You know where he is? Right here. And I can let him take over, or I can cast him out. But he doesn't exist anywhere else. Don't believe me? Take all human beings out of a complete area and see what happens to that area. And this has nothing to do with the environment, the atmosphere, or anything else. I'm not an environmental freak. What happens? God's plan takes hold. The laws of nature rule. Everything functions as it should, and there is no evil anywhere. Now that ought to tell you that evil exists in the hearts and minds of man. That's where you're going to find the devil. If there is one, he's in us. If you don't believe that, try that little experiment. Just try it. Evil exists only where man exists. Okay? Is there evil on the sun? No. Why not? No, there's no men on the sun. There's no men on the sun. We're not there. The only place you'll find evil is where you find a man or a woman. The more men and women you find, the more evil you're going to find there. Just within us. Why does it exist within us? We're going to find out some of it. We're going to find out why certain things are happening. Okay? If we go back as far back into history as we can possibly go, No matter what you believe, because what I'm going to tell you now is the official hidden version of mankind that is taught in this music. It's not what I believe. Doesn't have to be. It doesn't matter whether it's what I believe or what you believe or anything else believes. What matters, folks, is that these people are running things. And if they're running things, what they believe will affect us, and we better know what the hell that is. Because that's what's driving them. Drives them. Whatever's driving them that's going to affect us, we have to understand to be able to combat it. A general that goes upon a battlefield without any knowledge of his opponent's enemy commander, his abilities, his tactics, his forces, the weapons at his disposal, and the morale of his men, is most probably going to lose that battle. Some of you have been in responsible positions in the military, you understand that. Here's the version of history. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it, believe in it, or not. It's what they believe. It's what's driving things today. You better understand it. They believe that way back at the dawn of the history of the human race, there was a golden age. How many of you have heard that? Golden age. So many people read about it in their writings and don't understand what it is, and don't even ask the question. They just take it for granted. I did that for years. Golden age. Oh, that's nice. Keep reading, thinking I understood what I was reading. I didn't understand what I was reading until I figured out what they're talking about. The golden age was the age of innocence in man evolution. This is their story, remember, so don't get upset if you believe it isn't. Man could not think. It was an animal. It was innocent. Innocent. He went about his business living according to the laws of nature with the other beasts and animals and plants on this earth. What does religion call it? Garden of Eden. Religion says it's the Garden of Eden. God made Adam and Eve, put them in the garden. They lived in innocence alongside the beasts of the field, lions and tigers and the plants and the trees. Back during that time, man was, they say, vegetarian. Ate roots and plants and nuts and berries just like many of the animals did. Man lived in harmony with nature. At some point during that time, some man had an original thought. What is that called in religion? Original sin. Man wasn't supposed to think. That original thought. And with that original thought, he picked something up and he used it to kill an animal. Bonk. You're eating the root that I was going to eat. Bonk. And he killed it. And it was dead. He decided to take a bite and see what it tastes like. It tasted good. He became a meat eater, and a tuber eater, and a berry eater, and a nut eater, and a nut eater, vegetable eater. And somewhere along the line, man had learned to use this club. The man that could use the club was more powerful than other men. Just like today, folks, there are people who seem to catch on quicker than others. Doesn't mean the ones who haven't caught on yet are stupid, or they don't have a brain, or they're worthless. It just means they haven't caught on yet. And so the guy that had the club became the king. I'm the king because if you mess with me, I'll hit you with my club. You haven't learned how to pick up a piece of wood and hit me with it yet. So I am your master. worked until he said, you ain't the king, I'm the king. Well, we the king. Let's all be king. And then men had to be wary of each other. That was the consequence of that. Men then had to be wary of each other. Then came a day when, lo and behold, fire fell from heaven. A streak of light came out of the sky and struck a tree and caught it on fire. And that tree was burning. Wow. Now, you'll never understand the significance of that until you understand the significance of this. Back in those times, according to the mystery schools, man was pretty much helpless. And man, unlike the animals, didn't have this big coat of wool. May have had some hair, more than we do now. But he didn't have this big woolly coat. He lived mostly in the tropics. If he went too far out of the tropics, he would die because he didn't have the means to protect himself from the cold. Man understood instinctively that the sun provided the conditions for life on earth. How did he know that? Because when the sun rose in the morning, he was damn thankful to see it, wasn't he? It was warm. And it lit up the earth, and he could see. He could see what he was doing. He could see dangerous animals coming from sometimes miles away. And he instinctively knew that the sun was giving of itself for him and for the plants and the other animals on the earth to live. And in giving of itself, it would all of a sudden sink down and disappear and die. Man lamented that passing. He would spend the night huddled in fear, praying that the sun would come back and save him from the darkness. So the sun became the savior of man as it rose every morning and died every night. Man learned to confront the prince of darkness, and a battle raged between the forces of light and the forces of darkness every 24 hours. That was the beginning of the first religion according to the mysteries. And the first man who learned to predict what happened in the heavens became the first priest. And the priest was the one who sat the first king on the first throne by using what? The gift that Prometheus brought to man. Who said that? I heard the word. What is it? Fire. Prometheus is another word for what? Lucifer. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Lucifer was what? The great angel of light. In the mysteries, they believe that the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is a metaphor for the evolution of mankind. Now remember, this is what they believe. That man was being held prisoner in the bonds, the chains of ignorance in the Garden of Eden by an unjust and vindictive and terrible God. He was set free by Lucifer through his agent Satan with the gift of intellect, which was brought to man with fire. The story of Prometheus bringing the gift of fire from heaven to mankind is a story of Satan enticing Eve, and then Adam through Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In other words, they believe that the great fall of man was not a fall at all, but was a tremendous gift from Lucifer, who is their God. What does Lucifer represent? The intellect, knowledge. Some man went to that tree when it was burning after it was struck by that lightning, after Lucifer was flung out of heaven by God. In Greek, he was called Prometheus, gave the gift of fire to man. Fire has ever since been the symbol of learning, knowledge, intellect. Why do you think every great book of learning has inside the front cover a lamp with a flame, or a torch? Why do you think after they killed him, they put an eternal flame on the grave of John F. Kennedy? It represents the conquering of nature and the universe by the mind, the intellect of man. It represents the apotheosis of humanity, the perfection of the race which they seek. Deep stuff, huh? It is deep stuff, but you have to understand it in order to be able to combat it, or to be able to work it to your will instead of being worked to their will. Whoever picked a burning branch up from that burning tree and learned to keep it alive became the ruler of his universe. Fire could only come from God. God lived in fire. Fire was God. Fire represented the ability to think. Fire represented the intellect. Why do you think every major religion in the world, bar none, up to a certain point in history, kept a fire burning on the altar which was never allowed to go out? It was the representation of the sun. All life, all energy, everything flowed from the sun. The sun was the representation of the power of God in the priesthood. To the common, profane humanity, the sun was God and was worshipped by almost every tribe and nation and people upon the face of this earth. It's important that you understand this because you're going to see the symbology everywhere. How many of you have really been to Dealey Plaza? What did you see there? You didn't see anything, did you? People go there every day, they don't see anything. How many of you knew that the ancient pyramids were never burial chambers? Never. Okay, some of you are up to date. Most of you aren't, but most of you don't know this. They were not burial chambers. They were temples of initiation in which the candidate was placed in the sarcophagus, suffered a mystical or symbolic death, lay 3 days in the coffin alone, and then was raised by the grip of the lion's paw, given a new name, and sent through the initiation in the passageways of the pyramid. How many of you knew that the sum total of all of the knowledge of the primitive peoples was built into the pyramids to be passed on to the initiates? The mysteries are old. Freemasonry is old. Rosicrucianism is old, ancient. It began when the first man picked up a branch, burning, how to keep it alight. And he learned by hiding the method by which he maintained the fire, and by telling the common man that God dwelt in the fire, and by learning to predict the movements of the heavens, he could control all of the people in the realm that he could commune. And he became the first priest. The priests have seldom been kings, but the priests have always been the power behind the kings. Without the okay of the priests, the king cannot mount the throne. Could not in those days. Okay? So they learned several things. They learned that by being able to predict the natural events in the heavens, to be able to keep a warning of the Lord, and to be able to start a fire from nothing and not be able to not teach that to your kids, they could control large numbers of people who in those days thought that that was magical. And then their lives depend upon knowing when to plant the corn, when to till the ground, and all of those things. These are the things that the priests learned to teach. And of course, if they made a wrong guess, a prediction, what was it? We've done something. Therefore, we must make a sacrifice. Right? You're it. For some reason, virgins. In South America, it was whoever the captives were. And they would create wars just to get captives so that they could have sacrifices to appease the gods. All throughout the history of the world, these people have been the ones who have collected and hoarded the sum total of the knowledge of humankind. They call themselves the illumined ones, and in those days they were truly illumined, enlightened. They're the only ones who had the knowledge. The rest of the people were deprived. Over long periods of time, some knowledge would either leak out to the people, or the people would make discoveries, or would have original thoughts of their own and pass it on. So as man became more educated, the machinations of the Illuminati became more complicated and more clever. And the more they had to really hoard and guard the technology and the knowledge and the truth that they held. They called what they knew the esoteric, and what you know, or the profane, the exoteric. In other words, the esoteric is the inward truth, that which is withheld, that which is guarded, not known by what they call the masses. The exoteric is the outward form that they throw to the people, the metaphors that they tell. One of the ways they put it that I wrote in my book is that they speak directly to God while the people bow down to stone statues which can neither hear nor speak. Now, it doesn't mean they're really speaking to God. This is a metaphor, remember. What it means is they're really communicating the truth. This is what they believe. Doesn't matter what we believe in their world. And if they're controlling us, we have to understand what it is that they believe and why. You see, they believe that through the use of the intellect, man himself will conquer nature. What happens when you conquer nature? You're God. Isn't that true? They believe through the use of science, the intellect of man will conquer nature and the universe, and man will be God. Now, does that ring true, religion? Of course it does. Isn't that the promise of Satan to Eve in the Garden of Eden? God lied to you. He lied to you. He's withholding your true nature. You see, he doesn't want you to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because if you do, ye will surely become as gods, and ye will not surely die. Isn't that what he said? So aren't the mysteries saying the same thing? Only they're reversing the benevolence and malevolence of the two. In traditional religion, you say that the God of the Garden of Eden, who put Adam and Eve there, was a benevolent, good God, and they were living the good life. And if they hadn't have sinned, they'd still be there, living and taking care of the animals in the garden and be living a blissful, wonderful existence. And they're saying, hey, that guy that put them there and kept them in the bonds of ignorance wasn't doing them a favor. They were really slaves in this ignorant state, this innocent life, this golden age. Lucifer set man free, gave him the gift of intellect, the use of which will make him God. Now, it would amaze you to know how many people really believe in this. It would absolutely amaze you to know that some of the major religions in the world, disguised as Christian religions, actually worship Lucifer. Disguised as Christian religions actually worship Lucifer. Disguised as Christian religions actually worship Lucifer. Between who was going to save mankind from itself, Jesus won that battle. He had his chance, he failed. Now it's Lucifer's turn. You might also be shocked to know that Tom Valentine believes that. And he said it in an interview with Richard Noon. Said it. What's the name of that book? Ice, the Ultimate Disaster 5-5. Name of that book? Ice, the Ultimate Disaster 5-5. Name of that too? Believe this. That are really not patriots at all, but are functioning in the Hegelian dialectic to move you or to pit you against each other, or to just find out who in the hell you are. Traveled all over the whole country. Wherever he is the religion of whoever he's talking to. It's true. When he's talking to Christians, he's a Christian. When he's talking to Christian identity, he's a Christian identity. If he's talking to Nazis, he's a Nazi. Talking about Bobo. If he's talking to Mormons, he's a Mormon. If he's talking to people who hate Mormons, he's left the Mormon church. If he's talking to the New Agers in Sedona, Arizona, he's tried every religion in the world, and he's never found one that he could believe in. That's Bo Gritz. You don't believe me? Go get all his tapes talking to all these different groups and listen to his own words. Now, I don't care what religion the man is. I believe in freedom. You know what I care about? He's lying to a lot of people. That matters to me. Some people tell me, well, that doesn't matter. He's doing good. I mean, you know, maybe he has some failings. Every time he speaks to a different. And every time he gets caught, he says he's never going to do it again. But he does. And just recently on his radio show, this man was talking about how he put his son through past life regression and how he believed in reincarnation. The only reason I'm telling you this is so that you will be aware that you're being manipulated by a lot of different people and that you can't allow it to happen. You cannot believe anyone anymore. This is the age of deception. If you don't learn this today, I hope you learn that. This is the age of deception. Who's the great? So you better be careful if you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian,